Thank you to Ava, and thank you to our choir. Thank you for bringing us music that helps me wrestle with the question that I have been wrestling with for the last several weeks, or perhaps the last several months, or maybe even the last several years. And it's this core question for me, which is that as we see what is happening in our communities and in our world, how can this moment call us into deeper alignment with our values? I would even say, how can this moment radicalize us into deeper alignment with our values, rather than drive us to despair? Back in November of 2024, when you all were preparing to call me as a co-minister here at this congregation, I talked to you about my favorite kind of pine cone, the ceratinous kind. And for those of you who did not take the biology lesson fully to heart, we'll review. Ceratinous pine cones are the ones that exist in the pine trees that populate areas where wildland fires are common. Ceratinous pine cones only open and release their seeds after fire has moved through. They require that high, intense heat of wildland fire in order to reproduce. That's how they have evolved. That's the adaptation they have brought to the forest. They know that there will be fire, and that there are things worth planting afterwards. And then during my installation back in May of this year, my friend and colleague, the Reverend Sean Neil Barron, offered a sermon that invited us to venture into the places that love calls us, even if they are places we thought we would never go. And so today is an invitation to grow our capacity to do those things, to grow our capacity to move through a time of change and upheaval with an eye not towards despair, but instead with an eye towards where love is calling us, with an eye towards finding what is emerging in those places that we can plant and tend. And today is an invitation to hold that the work of the earth teacher we have been learning from all January long, to hold that the work of molten rock, of magma, of the forces that formed and reformed the earth out of fire, those forces are not gentle. It's like the choir sang this morning, if you want fire, we'll give you fire. Right? If you kidnap our neighbors, if you disappear parents from school drop-off, if you murder our neighbors in broad daylight, if you murder our neighbors by hiding them in detention centers, if you lock away my black neighbors and tell me it's to keep me safe, if you want fire, we will give you some fire. But engaging that fire, engaging in that work, that discipline of showing up where love is calling us, that discipline of knowing that even if the tree has burned down, there is something to plant in its wake. It is a discipline. It is not something that we can do on a whim or without some sense of capacity and resources. And we have been talking all month about the bigger context, about how our Unitarian Universalist values call us in to dismantling systems like immigration and customs enforcement, to dismantling systems of policing and prisons, and call us into prisoner solidarity like we heard about so powerfully last week. But many of you have come to me and said, okay, but what am I supposed to do? That's today. And there are a million different calls to action that I could issue today, specific organizations to get in touch with. And I should say, if you are going to remember nothing else, if you are just like, I just need to go give a little money to something that will make me feel slightly better, I would invite you to look up LGBT Books to Prisoners, which is a nonprofit run out of Madison, Wisconsin, that sends books to incarcerated queer people. That would be enough. So that's if you just need a thing, that's your thing. But more than a thing to do is that I want us to build our skills, because I think what we see unfolding right now is that we are not in a situation where we are going to take one action and then it will be fixed. That we are in the middle of an enormous upheaval that has been hundreds of years in the making. And so this is our opportunity to not abandon our neighbors. So we're going to talk about 3 skills, 3 muscles, 3 ways of being, 3 lenses you could use in the world. Pick the metaphor that you like best. And the first one I want to invite us into is what I have been thinking of as solidarity rather than solidity. And here's what that means, right? That how many of you like to know everything about something before you act? Yeah, this is like the creep. I saw the creep in the... like, that's me. Right? We like to know everything before we act. We are, right, as Unitarian Universalists, by and large, we think of ourselves as learning people. We want to learn everything about the issue before we take action. We want to make sure we have the right position before we say something about our values in the world. And this is not to say that you should not engage in any learning or education, but it is to say that as we look at our communities today, we are going to have to take action in the world before we feel certain. And if that feels really scary to you, I am going to give you an example of how that looks in a totally different arena, and because I bet you already know how to do this. I want you to imagine that a friend of yours has gotten a really scary diagnosis. Before you show up for your friend, right, before you show up and support them, do you feel like you have to read medical journal articles about their diagnosis? Do you feel like you have to know everything about the specific type of disease they have in order to support them? I see, like, if you're an actual medical provider, pick a different metaphor. But for the rest of us, right, sometimes you think I can't see your faces up here, but I definitely can. Right? That for the rest of us, we don't say, like, I can't figure out how to help you until I review all the relevant literature. No. We say, like, that sounds really scary. I want to show up for you. Can I give you rides to your infusions? Are you eating? Is your spouse eating? Let me deliver some groceries. We know how to do this. We know how to show up when things are uncertain and the people we love are in need. Right? We know how to show up without knowing everything. But sometimes we struggle to apply that into the wider world, into our sense of who we are in community organizing and politics. And so my invitation is that we are going to be called into action in a world that does not feel solid. And that for many of us, especially folks with more privilege in our society, the fact that it ever felt solid was kind of an illusion. And so we are going to need to build our ability to act without knowing everything. So that's one. The second skill is what I call just help. Or if you want to like a slightly fancier term, I would say we are going to approach this time with a mutual aid lens. Meaning that by and large, our UU orientation to things sometimes is that we love to look for a root cause that we can solve legislatively. We really do. We do not enjoy the idea that there is something that we cannot address by telephoning our representatives. But I would say, and this is not just, I'm not saying don't call your representatives. But I am saying that I don't know if we're going to contact our legislators into getting free right now. Right? I don't think we are going to contact our legislators into keeping our neighbors safe. That when we see what's happening in other places in our country right now, as people are disappeared to camps, as people are like genuinely murdered in broad daylight, right? I don't know that we're going to telephone Ron Johnson or even Tammy Baldwin. There is no amount of calling them that is going to fix this here and now. There's no amount of calling them that is going to keep our community and our neighbors safe. And so that means that sometimes we're just going to need to show up and help. It means that we are going to need to show up with money for people who are at risk of deportation and are not going to work and need to pay their rent. We're going to show up with money. It means that we are going to need to bring groceries. It means that we are going to need to offer rides. It means that we will need to show up. And that, like I said, that doesn't mean you should stop seeking a legislative solution for what is happening, but that this moment is calling us to something bigger than that. And remember when I said that love was going to call us places we didn't think we would go? It's going to call us out of our comfort zone. It's going to call us to plant new seeds when everything as we knew it has been burned down. This is some of that. Is figuring out how to live our values in the world publicly and supportively with our neighbors. Solidarity rather than solidity. Sometimes we're going to just help. We're just going to meet people in their need. And like I said, those are things you actually know how to do. We're just putting them in a new context. And it's scary. It's like when you see someone you only know from work at the grocery store and you can't remember their name. We're going to take a skill and we're going to put it in a new context and it's going to be okay. Here's the last skill I want us to be building. We talked a couple weeks ago about unlearning. about how for Reverend Christina and I, our own journeys to thinking of ourselves as police and prison abolitionists involved unlearning ideas that we had been raised with. Unlearning the idea of, that people are locked away to keep us safe. Unlearning the idea that policing keeps our communities safe, unlearning our relationship to authority, unlearning our relationship to government entities. But that after the unlearning, there is relearning. There is construction about what these things mean in our communities, because so much, and one of the reasons that I am so grateful to be in this moment with you all and doing this work from a spiritual and faith-based lens, is that how many of us know people in our lives who have burned themselves out on their outrage? Who have just, they know that the system is broken and they want to burn it down, and they end up just burning themselves out. And for me, that's because it is not just that we need to call out the ways that the system is oppressive and wrong. We don't need to just call out the problems, but instead say what we will build instead. What are we building instead? How are we saying clearly, this is the world I want to live in, and here is how I am making it real in ways small and large? And there's 3 words that I think are extra important for us to figure out how to redefine for ourselves and our families and our networks in this moment. It's just nesting sets of 3. Because it helps us remember. So here's the 3 words I want us to think about. Number 1, how do we define safety? What does it mean to be safe? What does it mean to be safe in our homes? What does it mean to be safe in our communities? What does it mean to be safe when we drop our kids off at school? What does it mean to be safe when we drive down the street? What does it mean to be safe? Number 2 is that we need to understand how we define harm. Because like we shared a couple weeks ago in the reading from author and activist Mariame Kaba, as we build this world we dream of, we know that we cannot build a world without harm. That doesn't exist. Harm is real. It is a part of being alive and in community. And for a long time, we have let systems and structures define harm on our behalf. But that we are capable of defining harm too. And then the corollary to that, the 3rd word that I want us to figure out how we can redefine is accountability. And the example of why this is so crucial right now is that after the shooting yesterday, I feel like I have seen such a deep urge to use the existing instruments of policing and prosecution and imprisonment to punish the Border Patrol agents involved. And I would offer, is that what genuine accountability for what is happening in the Twin Cities right now look like? Would that genuinely and meaningfully hold the forces that caused this accountable? And for me, the answer is no, because it is not just an individual choice by an individual agent or agents that caused what we see. There is a deeper accountability that is necessary in order to address the harm that's happening in our communities. And friends, there is so much work to do. And so if you're like, this is overwhelming, I am overwhelmed, and I don't know where to begin. I would invite you to begin somewhere, something, somehow, some form of engagement with your neighbors, with an organization in the community. I would be happy, not today, because I'm going to jet to the protest at Houdini Plaza after service, but to engage, right? I would be happy to talk to you about how to plug in. Because, right, it's in that Mariame Kaba reading we shared a couple weeks ago, it's that, right, the idea that we have to transform everything makes us feel frozen and overwhelmed. But the flip side of that is that if we have to transform everything, we can start anywhere. If we are transforming a big, giant, interlocking set of systems that includes immigration and policing and incarceration and militarization of policing and school, right, and the school-to-prison pipeline and the ways we've criminalized homelessness, right, if we are addressing all of that, that means that we can start anywhere. We can start anywhere and find ways to reduce the harm the system is doing. We can start anywhere and build something different. Love is going to call us places we never thought we would go. Love is going to help us plant seeds after uncertainty. Love is calling us together. May it be so. Amen.